The Cold War. Welcome to another episode of Chronicles. In this episode, we embark on a journey through one of the most defining periods in modern history. The Cold War. A time of intense rivalry and ideological conflict between two superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. Join us as we explore the causes that set the stage for this global standoff and the major events that shaped the world for decades to come. The causes of the Cold War were numerous and complex. But several key factors contributed to the escalating tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. First of these is the rise of communism in the Soviet Union under the leadership of figures like Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin challenged the capitalist ideology of the West. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, established the world's first communist state, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics or USSR. The rise of communism in the USSR posed a significant ideological challenge to the capitalist West, particularly the United States of America. The fundamental differences in political and economic systems between communism and capitalism fueled mutual suspicions and hostilities. The United States viewed communism as a threat to its democratic values, individual liberties, and capitalist economic system. The ideological conflict between communism and capitalism set the stage for the ideological confrontation that would define the Cold War. There was also the desire of the United States to maintain global dominance. Following World War II, the United States emerged as one of the world's superpowers. As the only nuclear power, it held significant economic and military advantages over other nations. The U.S. sought to safeguard its position of global dominance and prevent the spread of communism to other regions. The Truman Doctrine, announced in 1947, exemplified the U.S. commitment to containing the spread of communism. It provided economic and military aid to countries threatened by communist influence, aiming to prevent the expansion of Soviet power and influence. Then there was the fear of a Soviet invasion of Western Europe. In the aftermath of World War II, the division of Europe into Western and Eastern blocs deepened the rift between the US and the Soviet Union. The Soviets established satellite states in Eastern Europe, creating a buffer zone to protect against future invasions from the West. The perception of an aggressive Soviet expansionist agenda, coupled with the memory of the devastation caused by World War II, fueled fears of a Soviet invasion. This fear was further heightened and the Soviets blockaded West Berlin in 1948, leading to the Berlin Airlift, a crucial event that showcased the determination of the West to defend Western Europe against Soviet aggression. The division of Germany into two countries was also a factor. At the end of World War II, Germany was divided into four zones of occupation controlled by the US, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France. The ideological and political differences between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union soon led to the division of Germany into East and West Germany. The creation of West Germany, the Federal Republic of Germany, as a democratic and capitalist state, and East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, as a communist state, solidified the division between the two blocs. The division of Germany became a symbol of the broader Cold War struggle between East and West. These factors, among others, contributed to the complex web of tensions that defined the Cold War. It was a period of high-stakes power politics, ideological battles, and geopolitical maneuvering that profoundly shaped the course of world history. The Cold War was marked by numerous major events that brought the world to the brink of nuclear conflict. The first significant event was the Berlin blockade from 1948 to 1949, when the Soviet Union cut off all access to West Berlin, leading to the dramatic Berlin Airlift by the Western powers. Earlier we learned that Germany was divided into four occupation zones controlled by the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France after World War II. In 1948, the Soviets blocked all land and water access to West Berlin, which was situated deep within the Soviet-controlled East Germany. The blockade was a response to the introduction of a new currency in West Berlin by the Western powers, seen as a threat to Soviet influence. In response to the blockade, the Western Allies launched the Berlin Airlift, a massive operation to supply food, fuel, and other necessities to West Berlin by air. The airlift lasted for almost a year and demonstrated the determination of the Western powers to support their allies and defend West Berlin against Soviet aggression. The blockade was eventually lifted in May 1949, but it further solidified the division between East and West, and heightened tensions during the early years of the Cold War. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, was another critical event. It was a devastating conflict that saw the United States and its allies supporting South Korea, while the Soviet Union and China backed North Korea. It began when North Korea invaded South Korea. The war escalated into a brutal and bloody conflict that saw heavy casualties on both sides. The United Nations, with the US playing a leading role, intervened in support of South Korea. The Chinese also entered the war on the side of North Korea, leading to a protracted and deadly stalemate. The war ended in 1953 with an armistice, but no formal peace treaty was ever signed, leaving the Korean peninsula divided at the 38th parallel. The Korean War was a crucial event in the Cold War, as it heightened tensions between the two superpowers and reinforced the policy of containment. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the edge of a nuclear catastrophe. In October 1962, the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, USA, sparked a tense standoff between the two superpowers, and it was only through intense negotiations that averted disaster. The crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, as the US demanded the removal of the missiles, and imposed a naval blockade to prevent further Soviet shipments to Cuba. After intense negotiations and a private deal between the US and the Soviet Union, the crisis was resolved peacefully, with the Soviets agreeing to remove the missiles in exchange for a US pledge not to invade Cuba, and a secret agreement to remove US missiles from Turkey. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a pivotal moment in the Cold War, as it highlighted the dangers of nuclear weapons and brinkmanship, and led to increased efforts to establish direct communication channels between the US and the Soviet Union to prevent future crises. The Vietnam War, lasting from 1954 to 1975, was a prolonged, divisive, and costly conflict that took place in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. It began as a struggle between the communist forces of North Vietnam, backed by the Soviet Union and China, and the US-supported government of South Vietnam. The war soon escalated, with the US committing large numbers of troops and resources to support South Vietnam. The Vietnam War was highly controversial, with widespread anti-war protests in the US and other Western countries. The conflict resulted in heavy casualties and extensive destruction in Vietnam and neighboring countries. It also deepened the divide between the US and the Soviet Union, with both sides providing military and financial aid to their respective allies. The war ended in 1975 with the fall of Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, to North Vietnamese forces. The country was reunified under communist rule, marking a significant victory for the Soviet Union and its allies in the context of the Cold War. In 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized the end of the Cold War era. It marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union and led to the reunification of Germany. The Berlin Wall had been built in 1961 by East Germany to prevent East Germans from fleeing to West Berlin, which was seen as a symbol of freedom and prosperity. By the late 1980s, economic and political reforms in the Soviet Union and its satellite states had led to widespread unrest and demands for greater freedom. In November 1989, the East German government announced that citizens could cross the border freely. Thousands of people flocked to the wall, and with the support of the West German government, the wall was breached and torn down. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked a turning point in the Cold War, leading to the reunification of Germany and the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It was a moment of hope and optimism for many, signaling the end of an era of division and hostility. These major events of the Cold War had profound and lasting effects on the course of world history, shaping the political, economic, and social landscape of the 20th century and beyond. They serve as a reminder of the complex and often perilous nature of international relations during the Cold War era. The Cold War had far-reaching implications on a global scale. It shaped international relations, influenced domestic policies, and left a lasting impact on the political landscape of the 20th century. Its legacy is still felt today. Chroniclers, we've traveled through the tumultuous era of the Cold War, exploring its causes and major events. This period of history reminds us of the importance of understanding the complexities of international relations and the consequences of ideological differences. Join us next time for another captivating episode of Chronicles. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep chronicling the past to better understand our present and shape our future.